Okay, this is chapter 14, section 1. This has to deal with, the whole chapter has to deal with worksheets and how the whole worksheet is created. And if you remember, what we've done is we've done this once before. So if you go back in your textbook and look at some of the earlier chapters, and specifically the ones with the plastic pages, you'll get a reminder about how we create this. But we're not quite ready to start on the worksheet yet. This chapter has about 5 or 6 different sections in it. We're going to work our way through each of the sections. I'll have a video for each section so you can work through piece by piece. The first section deals with, specifically has to talk about dividends and how dividends are issued to the shareholders. So let's kind of back up before we begin all that, and let's start with the very basics. We've looked at the first 15 or so chapters. We talked about just basically a sole proprietorship. And that sole proprietorship with the owners of the business, there were only a few owners, maybe 1 or 2 total. And what we did is we took the equity or the amount of money that that business made and we split it up amongst all the owners and we put them into their capital accounts. So what we've talked about in previous chapters is each of the owners' accounts had an individual capital account. When an owner or somebody who ran the business wanted to take money out of the business, they used the drawing account. Here's the difference between what we're studying then to what we are now. We've now moved into basically a bigger business corporation that has multiple owners, if not thousands of different types of owners. And we can't record all of their capital accounts in there because it just wouldn't make sense. So we take all the value of the company and we put in what's called the retained earnings account. That is the earnings that the business makes, and they're retaining them or holding on to them for the owners of the business. Now, the difference between sole proprietorship and partnership, when they issue money to people or we take money out of the business, is you can't walk into a big corporation and go, I'd like to withdraw some money for the business. That just doesn't make sense, nor can you really do it. So what we do is corporations give money to their shareholders to keep them interested in the business. And what they do is they call that dividends. Now, the first part of the whole process is what's called declaring a dividend. And what that simply means is that the business is going to take a look at their profits. They're going to break the profit up amongst all of the owners of the business based on the number of shares that are out there. And that's going to give them how much each dividend is worth per share. So let's give you some better examples. Let's understand that the business that you've invested in is now going to decide to pay you or give you an incentive to stay with them in that form of a dividend. A dividend is just simply a check or a value that they're going to give each share of stock, and they're going to pay it to you that way. Here's the downside of it. The business, once they declare a dividend, they are legally responsible to pay that dividend. So it becomes a liability. So it's a payable for them. Now, business owners and businesses are fairly smart about this, but they do spend a little bit of time working with and making sure that that they have the money in order to issue the dividend. So let's go a little bit more in depth with this. If we take a look at this example, and this is an example they have in the textbook as well, is what they've decided to do is they have 25 shares outstanding. They have 25 shares sitting out on the market, and they decide to issue a $2 per share dividend. So they're going to write a check for $5,000 and issue it amongst all those 2,500 shares. So if you were to own 2 shares of stock here, you would get $4. You get a check from that business for $4. Let's look at it in a bigger picture. Let's take a look at Microsoft. Microsoft, at the very bottom down here, has decided in June 30th that they're going to issue $23,150,000 of their net income is going to be applicable towards their common shares. So that means that they're going to take that number and split it amongst the shareholders, the common shareholders. So if we were to take a look at it, that $5,000 would actually be that $23 million. And we haven't yet to figure out actually how many shares are outstanding and how much they were per stock. Now, if we look back at a previous dividend, we can look at their stock ticker and we can find out that this company, this Microsoft, issued $1.12 per share. So if I had 2 shares of stock and they issued that dividend, then I get $2.24. Now, we have to figure out how many shares are outstanding. So if we go back and look at it, they issued the last time their stock or dividend per stock were $1.21 or $1.12. I can't remember which one it was. So if we go back and look at how many shares are outstanding for Microsoft, they actually have 8.3 billion shares outstanding. That means that they have sent out and that people have paid for 8.3 billion shares out there. If we take a look at it, the 2,500 shares would actually be 8.3 billion, and they would take the $23 million, break that amongst the 23 billion shares out there, and that's how much they would pay per share of stock. Now, it's not quite that simple, but that's kind of the gist behind it. So once they've declared that dividend, they have to record it. So what we're going to do is we're going to record here. We're going to issue $2 per dividend, or $2 dividend for the 2,500 shares. We're going to issue $5,000. That means we're going to give $5,000 of our profit back to the shareholders. Well, how do we record that? Well, we're going to record that in. We're going to increase our liability. Dividends payable is going to be credited there, and we're going to record and show that we issued $5,000 in dividends for this year. So our dividends is actually going to go up. It's going to show that we've increased, or we're going to pay out $5,000, and we're going to put that liability on the books as dividends payable. Now, what they do is once they've declared that dividend, they send all the shareholders a form of paper saying, hey, here's how much we're going to pay out per dividend, and here's how much you're going to get for it. And later on down the road, what they do is they actually pay it. And simply the paying of the dividend is just like paying a liability anytime. You're just going to decrease your cash. You're going to take that $5,000 cash out there, and you're going to decrease your dividends payable. Okay, so that ends section 1 of this chapter. And so what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to try it on your own and make sure that you get that correct, and then we'll start on to the next section.